Welcome back, you guys, and while we are in the middle of the offseason, we can map out likely scenarios for the 2019-2020 NBA season, which teams have the best title chances, which teams have the worst chances at a title, and which players have the most to prove. Which players are under the most pressure going into the 2020 season. The conversation about these 9 players I'm about to talk about will change depending on how they and their teams perform. More than half of the players I'm about to talk about have a lot of pressure going into the postseason. Now, something that's easy and doesn't cause pressure is using the SeatGeek app to purchase tickets. If you're trying to see a sporting event, comedy show, or concert, the best way to do that is through the SeatGeek app, who I want to thank for sponsoring this video. SeatGeek does all the work for you by putting every single ticket from that event into one spot for you to pick from, so you don't have to check multiple sites. They then give those tickets a grade 1 out of 10. It has green circles for good deals and red circles for bad deals. If you're still not sure about the seat you picked, they have an interactive seating feature that you can click on and see what you'll be getting before you buy. As always, when you support SeatGeek, you're supporting my channel as well, so if you're thinking about going to a concert or a sporting event in the future, click the link in the description and you can get $20 off your first ticket purchase by using my promo code CAINE when you check out. Out of these 9 players, let me know which one is going to have the most pressure to do well next year. So the first player whose career will have new answers for us is Eric Bledsoe. He signed a contract extension before the playoffs, was picked to the first All-NBA defensive team, and probably had his best season from a team offensive perspective. But in the playoff rounds against Boston and Toronto, he was not good on offense. He was not closing games in part of the Raptors series because he was not being guarded and made some bad decisions as a ball handler. It had some people questioning, should they have given him that extension? The Bucks just lost Malcolm Brogdon, who was one of the players that finished games over him in the conference finals. Now the question is, how much do you trust Eric Bledsoe and George Hill as your guards in a playoff series against the Sixers? If the Bucks lose to the Sixers in the conference finals and Giannis plays well, we're going to get the question of, did the Bucks make the wrong decision by re-signing Bledsoe in the middle of the season? The Bucks committed long-term money to Bledsoe in the middle of Giannis' prime years, so if he has another bad playoffs like last year, there's going to be an increase in the talk about Giannis leaving in 2021, so get ready for it if the Bucks don't make the finals this year. We're going to talk about players that have pressure in the playoffs, but what about somebody that has pressure on him in the regular season? That player is Kristaps Porzingis. Some questions to ask you watching. How good of a fit is Kristaps on this Dallas team, and will he be conditioned enough to play around 65 games in the regular season? Whatever you think the answers to those questions are will tell us how sure or unsure you are about the Mavs sneaking into the playoffs. The Mavericks traded away their 2017 first-round pick Dennis Smith Jr. and 2 future first-round picks for a 7'3" all-star center coming off of an ACL surgery. The Mavs looked at this as an opportunity to bring in a legit player to pair with Luka Doncic. They gave Porzingis a 5-year, $158 million contract, and part of the reason why this is risky is that not only is he 7'3" coming off a torn ACL, but he's had a bunch of nagging injuries from his quad to his shoulder and ankle. There isn't pressure for Kristaps to help Dallas make the playoffs this year, but there's pressure on him to stay healthy and be an impact player. The Mavs traded away future picks for this guy, and if there's not flashes of 2017 Porzingis this season, then there's going to be some concern. We've seen Porzingis as the face of a team. With the Knicks, Kristaps took a lot of shots in the mid-range area and was the center of the offense. He wasn't asked to set picks for other dudes in New York like he will for Luka to open up the floor. I'm not saying there's going to be problems, but we know Porzingis has an ego, and when you read stuff about his brother, who is his agent, you kind of get why the Knicks wanted to get rid of him. I think the Doncic and Porzingis pairing is going to work, but a big part of Dallas' future is hinging on Porzingis staying healthy and getting back to his all-star level in 2017. The third player who has pressure to deliver next year is Paul George. The Clippers traded 2 starters in their rotation and 5 first-round picks to OKC for Paul George. Now, you can say that they had to give that much up so they can get Kawhi as well, but they still gave up a lot, and I'm not mad at them. You definitely go and get the number 3 guy in MVP voting to pair with Kawhi. The Clippers, like a lot of teams in the West, are trying to win a title. PG needs to come through for them because outside of a few trades around the margins, this is going to be their team. Kawhi is pretty much Teflon at this stage of his career and won't catch much heat if the Clippers take an L in the second round. Outside of making timely passes, there's nothing you can really knock Kawhi for as a player without nitpicking. The guy who's going to be catching heat if the Clippers do lose in the second round, though, is Paul George. Because if Kawhi is going off and Paul George is shooting like, 5 of 17 from the field against Houston in the playoffs, he's going to get slandered. If he goes out sad again in the playoffs like he did against Utah, there's going to be internal discussion in the Clippers front office saying, wow, we just traded all of those picks for a guy that underperforms in the playoffs, has to have surgery every offseason, and is up for a $250 million extension in 2021 when he's 32 years old. This is somebody who had knee surgery after the 2018 playoffs, somebody who was playing with a nerve issue in his left foot, and somebody who had surgeries on both of his shoulders this past summer. And he's going to miss the first few weeks of this upcoming regular season. Paul George has to be healthy and play well in postseason environments he hasn't been in since 2014. The fourth player who has pressure on him to succeed is Donovan Mitchell. Now, it feels kind of wrong to have somebody that's going to be 23 years old on here, and this might be the biggest reach, but there is pressure on him because Utah revamped the roster around him and Gobert to compete for a conference finals. In the second half of last season, Donovan Mitchell played really well and nearly got on the All-NBA third team after a rough start to the season. But in the playoffs against Houston, he faced similar struggles from the 2018 series. His pull-up three failed him, he averaged more turnovers than assists, and he struggled to finish at the rim. Now, not all of it was his fault. The 2019 Jazz were not built to have premier three-point shooting and ball handling to help Mitchell create offense. But the 2020 Utah Jazz with Bojan Bogdanovic, who averaged 20 points per game after the All-Star break for the Pacers, and Mike Conley, who's been one of the steadiest point guards in the West for a decade, Mitchell should have an easier time finding angles to score. There isn't title pressure, but this upcoming season will tell us a lot about Donovan's future. He has more guys to help him create stuff on offense. Maybe he can become a better guy on spot-up threes next season. He has the roster around him, so he needs to take a step. There won't be questions about his future with Utah or anything because they're going to offer him that rookie max extension when he's up for it, but depending on how he performs with these new pieces around him, we'll have new expectations. Can Donovan Mitchell grow into a definite top 15 to 20 player, or is he just a top 30 or top 35 player in the league, which is a huge difference? The next player who has a lot of pressure on him going to next year is Ben Simmons. Simmons signed a 5-year, $170 million contract with the Sixers this summer, and even though he's just 22 and already has an All-Star appearance under his belt, you heard a lot of, oh, how can you pay a guy that much money and he can't shoot and you can't give him the ball in the final minutes of a playoff game? And you know what, I can't argue too much about the jump shot comments. I know right now in these off-season videos he's looking like a 99 overall with Hall of Fame difficult shots, but I really doubt that's what he's doing next season. What would make the Sixers a more trusted title favorite is if Ben Simmons had even a slightly below average three-point shot. It would open up so much for the Sixers and you'd honestly feel good about picking them to win the East. But that is not the reality we live in. The Sixers have had issues creating offense against the best defenses in the playoffs, partly due to Ben Simmons' lack of outside game, and they are not clear favorites to get out of the East. You could also add in Joel Embiid as a player who has pressure going into next season. I'm not sure what happened with Joel in like 3 of those games against Toronto, but his body failed him. He had an illness and a bad knee, and they might have won the series if he was healthy. It feels wrong to have 2 players 25 and under on here, but people really want to break up this duo. They have a clear path to the conference finals, and let's say they go out super sad against the Bucks, or they somehow lose in the second round, then the trade Ben Simmons or trade Joel Embiid stuff is going to pick up even more than it has in the past. I don't totally agree with it, but that's what's going to happen if they have another bad playoff loss. The third to last player in this video is Russell Westbrook, who just got traded to the Houston Rockets. I made a video about the fit with James Harden and Russell Westbrook. I think this is going to work fine in the regular season. He should be more available than CP3 was, and he adds a different dynamic as a transition player. But no one's going to be judging them for their regular season success. The Rockets want to win a title. I can picture a scenario right now where the Rockets are in the second round of the playoffs and Westbrook is going out sad like he did against Utah in 2018 and Portland a few months ago. He's turning the ball over, his on and off ball defense isn't good, and he's wasting offensive possessions. I doubt they lose in the first round, but we gotta put it on the table. Maybe they lose in 5 in the second round. Whether it's the correct on-court assessment or not, Russ is gonna be blamed if they lose ugly in the second round, and he's gonna be the scapegoat. Not to mention, if there's any decline in his game next year, then that just makes his contract even more untradeable. There's a lot riding on Westbrook making it work next to Harden, because it just feels like the Rockets organization and ownership will implode if they go out sad again in the playoffs. The last 2 players who have some pressure going into next season are LeBron and Anthony Davis. With Anthony Davis, the Lakers have pretty much threw away all of their future draft flexibility and young players for him. AD basically threw away half of an NBA season to get to the Lakers, so if he's anything less than what he was during the 2018 playoffs, then there's going to be some not so positive talk about him next spring. Davis is only 26, so it's not like there's immediate title pressure, but with the way he handled last season, I think anything less than the conference finals, people will start asking questions. Now with LeBron, I'm not expecting much during the regular season. Everybody's got to realize that he's going to be 35 and there's only so much he can exert in the regular season because he's going to save it for the playoffs. He's going to coast those random games in January and he's going to rest in some of those too. He'll have some big nights here and there, but I know I'm not expecting MVP LeBron in the regular season. I think there's a good chance that AD will finish higher in the MVP voting than LeBron does. LeBron's legacy is set, so if he never wins again, it's not a big deal to me, but the thing is, the Lakers did sell almost all of their future for Anthony Davis, so there is some pressure here to deliver a title. And that is it for 9 players who have pressure on them to succeed in the 2020 season. Donovan Mitchell might be a reach here, but there's some expectations for him with a more helpful roster, so he's got to perform. Appreciate you guys for making it to the end of this one. My next video, I'm not sure what it'll be on, but I want to talk about Josh Jackson, the Clippers, and the Knicks, so I'll see you guys soon.